Sawadee and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod, Mindful Media and Education this time. It's Mindful Media and Communication, usually the tagline, as you know. But it's the end of the semester, so I figured, hey, end of the semester? How about a little breakdown / recap of what happened this semester in regards to what worked well, what didn't work well, kind of like a reflection podcast. I teach my students that reflection is important to grow, so should also be doing that at the end of the semester. I do that usually also in podcast form, so if you want to listen to previous reflections, they're all on the channel. Check it out every 4 or 5 months or so, I guess, when the semester ends. So do check those out. Okay, so let's jump into it, right? Semester recap. What are the wins? What are some challenges? What are some lessons learned? All with a focus on higher education, of course. So, as I said, it's the end of the semester right now. It's exam time right now. I don't do actual exams anymore. I have lots of project-based learning implemented in class. So we're having final projects, group projects, but also individual work, of course. Do not always just refer to group projects, because there are, of course, also always challenges within those, which we, of course, try to then tackle with peer reviews and reflection papers and the like. So yeah, let's see what worked, what didn't, and what we can maybe take away for the next semester, right? A few key highlights, I will dive into detail in a second though, have been our first ever hackathon that we organized, and I'm saying we loosely there. And we had an intercultural workshop that we organized, and I was lucky enough to have the freedom and have the cool students to actually do some creative experiments during class, which I will explain in a little bit as well. So I'm curious, like, as I'm gonna start to talk about my wins and challenges and so on and learnings, what were your challenges and your learnings, and maybe also the wins that you've seen over this past semester? It could be higher education, could also be like in a primary or secondary education. I'm just curious, like, how you try to maybe disrupt education, or at least change your style a little bit, try new things, to share what works, what didn't. Maybe we can all learn from each other a little bit there, right? So, but let me jump into the wins first. So, one of the biggest wins and fails at the same time was our first ever hackathon. We call it Media X Hackathon, Faculty of Media and Mass Communication and Journalism, right? So the theme was like AI and communication. And it's a win because in the end, students loved it. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The students said it's so cool to do like some hands-on learning, tinkering, figuring things out, getting feedback from specialists right away. They said they learned a lot, they enjoyed it a lot. They would have loved to have such things more frequently, more often during their studies, which is great, right? Which is really, really, really great. I do think that we were able to bridging like AI and communication and innovation in media quite well. When we look at like metrics, KPIs, participation was great. The engagement from student side was great. And most solutions were real world applicable. That was also great. And I mean, there were lots of memorable like moments, even when students had like a breakthrough idea, for example, and oh, finally, now I get it, which you don't always have in normal classes, for example, right? So I think that was pretty cool. As for it being also a fail, and actually I plan to do like wins first and fails later, but I mean, it's the same topic, so let's jump into the fails too. I mean, the organization, it's the first time that we did a hackathon, and in the end there was not much of which is fair because, I mean, no one ever has done that before, so it's lots of like figuring out what do we need, how do we get it / them, like for example the specialists, the people that then give advice to the students, the judges, all those things, the sponsors, for example. Shout out to our sponsor teams, the team building in Bangkok. So if you're looking for team building in Bangkok or in Thailand in general, reach out to team building, who sponsored 2 of those prizes. Yeah, so they're very, 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 very difficult to get everything aligned, also then aligned with university guidelines or with what the universities used to do, because again, the faculty has never done anything like that. So they're like, so you want to invite like how many people to be like specialists and give advice? Like why? How do we pay them? How many like food packages do you need? What they're gonna be there all day long? Like what's happening? So, right, understandable that then the admin side of things from university side struggles a little bit if they haven't had done this before. So it's just a learning all around, I guess. And shall we be motivated enough to do this again? I hope it will be smoother the next time around, and maybe it can even open to not only the own faculty but the external faculties, or maybe even external participants from outside of university. So that would be like my dream, like have a big hackathon to invite like everybody, not just our students, to participate. I think then the learning will be even bigger, and it's going to be more fun, more exchange, more networking, and all those things, right? So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Okay, then what else worked very well? Well, I had lots of classroom experience that I really enjoyed. One of the bigger / newer ones was definitely one in our GE class, in our general education class. First year students have to take this class. It's called Creativity and Communication. And we started things off for the first class of the students in the university life with team building, thanks to the sponsor I just mentioned, team building. So teams came in to then do some team building exercises, activities with our students, which was super engaging, super creative, and the students enjoyed it a lot. They got to know each other quite well right away, much better than just like, hey, introduce each other, what do you like, what don't you like. It was a very nice way to actually getting the first year students like to loosen up, to not be scared of like big scary university life now, and to get to know each other and like work with each other. So I did enjoy this a lot. Students enjoyed it a lot. They're like, hey, we want this to have this now every single class, all those activities, from scavenger hunts to like then trust exercises, creativity exercises, and you name it, right? So it was pretty awesome. And the cool thing is also that like things like this, luckily, also fit very well into like our / mine, but also ours, like with my colleague, like approach to teaching, because we're very much like design thinking centered, I think, when it comes to how we structure our classes. Also thanks to the affiliation with the D School at Stanford, where we took like some courses 2.5 years or so. So yeah, we very, very ideation heavy focused, of course, focus on like then creating prototypes, and then testing those prototypes right away and collaborating and so on. So that's something that fit very well into our concept of how we're teaching, which I really enjoyed quite a lot. And I mean, the third highlight was probably then the workshop we did with primary school, the Ivy School in Bangkok, which was just cool to see. Cool that they had us, of course, and the students are great. They're really, really, really cool. But like, so my students went out as part of one of our classes to create a workshop about digital literacy for kids and their parents, and just seeing like how my kids, and I say it in quotation marks for those who are only listening, and then interact with the actual kids and try to educate and teach them and engage with them, was like this proud parent / prof moment, like, oh, look at my kids being teachers now and teaching the actual kids what we learned in class, and making theories like more tangible. That was pretty cool. And that's like also very much related to like the empathy phase in design thinking, if you will, right? Like listening to younger and also older participants, like and that then shapes the workshop approach, right? Doing some research and like meeting them first before actually doing the workshop. So the students did a great job doing this. I was very, very proud of the students being successful here. That was a very, 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 very cool moment. And there were a few other classroom experiments, but if you listen to my previous reflections, that's what I usually do, like just trying to change things inside the classroom, taking the classroom outside of the classroom as well, for example. I did lots of field trips or went to like some immersive exhibitions and whatnot. Students had to go to like, fourth year students had to go to networking events as well, for example. Like lots of stuff that are a little bit different maybe from other classes, but I think that just helps to keep it fresh and different, and also get the students out of their rut. Like, oh, I know it's going to be a class, I'm going to sit in there. No, you're not going to sit in the lecture hall just listening. You're going out and actually doing something, right? So a few lessons that I think I learned, or they were reinforced maybe even because I was hoping that would be the case, and most of the times was that it's always good to have like some form of practical applications of theories, of course, right? Rather than just talking about them. And some of the learning theories that you're probably familiar with if you listen to this podcast episode, like experiential learning, right? What else do we have? We have self-determination, right? Or even like what I said, design thinking. If you put them in place at the right spots in your syllabus, is actually very, very, very helpful. And it freshens it up a little bit. It's not just the same thing all the time. Students also will enjoy it. So I think that's just a very good idea while it's lots of work, also in regards to feedback and then assessment, of course, lots of work. But I think it really helps to guide the students through like different phases, such as like, when we talk design thinking, like the empathy phase, ideation phases, prototyping, iteration, and so on. And like just with hands-on approach, it just makes it way, way easier. Also, like I have quite a few self-paced assignments, for example. I think that's also important because self-determination, I think, plays in there as well. That you find your own way, you find your own speed, you find what you like, what you dislike, where you want to focus on, and so on. So just letting students explore a little bit more. And if you're familiar with what the D School is teaching, for example, like exploring over explaining, it's like a big approach there, which I like a lot. Like I actually stopped, like in the beginning I would lecture a lot because I didn't know any better, and then I slowly adjusted and like less lecturing, more exploring, and now like the lecturing is getting less and less, and you're getting more and more into the exploring part. And in the beginning, I don't even lecture much anymore. I just start with a prompt usually, and then like, hey, let's explore. What do we figure out? And then maybe I explain something, right? I lecture a little bit, or throw some lectures in there, here and there. But that's lots of fun, I think, for students. For me, very exhausting, but it makes it much better, much more fun, much more, I don't know, immersive for the student as well, I think. So focus on exploring. When I talk about the challenges, right, because of course not everything worked out perfectly. I mean, I hate it when students say it, so I'm only going to say it when not using it as an excuse, but it's crazy how difficult scheduling things is in academia. Like, oh my God. Universities really make it difficult to schedule things. It's crazy. Like just to get classrooms and whatnot, like crazy difficult to actually schedule stuff. Like, whew. Also, I mean, that's just very special for us, but the commute between our two campuses is just ridiculous. I mean, nobody's fault, but when you're on one campus and you have to go to the other campus, it's like, in theory, it's less than an hour. In real life, it's 2 hours, easy. In traffic jams, which makes it just frustrating. But okay, that's just something different. Also, what you wouldn't think from a university, but like technology and resource limitations are just a bit something surprising. You wouldn't assume that, right? You're like, hey, you're a big uni, we should have access to basically everything. We have everything, but getting it is just, I mean, if you're in education, you know the problem, right? You have resources somewhere at your organization, but actually getting hands on it is like, a hold of it is pretty difficult. Yeah, you need to find the right people, right requests, right memos, and then it takes too long. It's just crazy. I think it's just a big problem when it comes to education anyways. I mean, I'm speaking for higher education, but I would assume in other forms of education it's similar. It's like, it's so difficult to just do things. Like, I have this idea, I want to do this, and like, yeah, but you first have to go through this or this, you jump through those hoops, and it's just so difficult, right? It's crazy. There's a reason why it's so difficult, of course, understood. Doesn't really help when it comes to motivating teachers to try new things too. I think another thing from like organizing some of the events, what I also saw is like there's some engagement gaps in there, right? Because some students did struggle to fully engage during the events, during special workshops and whatnot. And I think there are a few reasons for it. For example, I mean, one could be digital fatigue, for example, which is understandable. They're online all the time, right? So, and we're adding more like AI to it, for example. Hey, it's an AI hackathon, 2.5 days. Let's go. Just AI. Like, oh, dude, that's too much right now. Understandable, right? Uneven participation, like when you work in teams and some participate less, more, right? So of course there's also some annoyance in there, for example. Even so there's peer review, you're still annoyed that like that person doesn't help you as much as you want, of course. And I also think that, and I was thinking about this like a lot when I reflected on like the hackathon and a few other events, the cognitive load, right? There's a cognitive load theory that you're probably familiar with, which then says like if it's something is too complex, basically, this could also hinder learning. So I'm wondering if some of our events slash exhibitions slash projects have been too complex and that then might hinder the learning. But then again, if you make it too easy, it's not as challenging and you rise when you face challenges, right? So I think that's a difficult process to find like the right challenge versus too easy, too difficult. You might have been there as well, right? So if you have, let me know how you combat those challenges. I do try to spin like everything a little bit like as like a learning, of course. And when it comes to this, right, I think since we talked this design thinking earlier, I think with a stronger emphasis, even stronger emphasis on testing, like assessment maybe, but like not like exam wise, but like just testing as you go and have more feedback loops. I do work a lot with feedback, but maybe more natural feedback loops rather than right now most feedback loops are on MS Teams, which is our LMS. So maybe different kind of feedback loops that are not always looking similar. So like, we know this already from other classes. So maybe that's something that could help, I think. Also, maybe in the define phase, so still sticking with the design thinking approach, right? So in the define phase, like when you're defining things like challenges and what's happening, maybe some definitions could have been clearer. But then again, sometimes I'm unclear on purpose or not unclear, but less clear on purpose to make the explore stage bigger. So I think that's also like how much do you let them explore versus how much do you guide them, right? It's also like something that you have to like kind of figure out. So again, happy to hear how you're managing this. So I think those are some of the challenges. So having that said, right, let's focus on lessons and strategies for improvement, because I did also think a lot about this. So looking at like some of the theories that I try to implement, but maybe could implement better, right? I think, well, that's one thing that I try actually every semester, like constructivism, right? Scaffolding, like try to like mix things together, balancing everything, like balancing challenge with support, right? If you find the right balance, I think then you can maximize the student potential. If like one is bigger than the other, then it's going to be difficult. So I just think like finding the right balance is the big challenge, and I'll have to keep trying. And again, if you have any suggestions, I'm happy to listen to that. I also came across another approach to UDL. You also, if you're in education, you're familiar with the universal design for learning, and in making lessons a bit more maybe inclusive even in regards to engagement, I think. So there should be like different, I think, layers of engagement, even for the students who are a little less engaged or not engaged. It's easy for me, at least for me, like to have like the super high engagement, like, hey, let's go, and then motivate the students that want to be motivated. But of course, there are students that don't want to be engaged. And then how do you keep them also in the loop? You cannot save everybody, I understand that, but you do want to have students that might not be as, eager to voice their excitement, for example, still being involved, right? So I think that's something that I could also look at. If I look at like the framework that I'm using a lot, right, the D-School / design thinking principles, like the first step would be like the empathy stage and then the defining stage, right? So maybe being even clearer on the student needs. I think, to be honest, especially like this batch right now, we call it like the COVID kids. I think that they're just different needs to the ones before and even the ones that are coming after right now. So they're contextualizing assignments, projects to their reality, to what they're used to, might be better, more helpful. When it comes to ideation, prototyping, I want to focus more on like more rapid fire brainstorming and maybe more like low stake testing, like making more tests rather than like 2 or 3 big ones, I guess. So that's my thoughts right now. And then when it comes to the iteration at the end, right, more reflection, of course, and like I said earlier, more like maybe natural reflection rather than just online/MS Teams reflection, for example, right? So maybe having earlier checkpoints even could also help with feedback. So that's something I might try to consider when it comes to the next semester. Time management wise, I feel like rather okayish, except the events, of course. So, but that's of course also like, as you probably also either know from listening to me, my educational podcasts, or now guess probably, I'm not necessarily super academic because I did work in the real world before. And so I have this more agile project management mindset. So I think that's actually something that me and my students that in this regard all can actually also handle quite well, which props to the students for being agile and adjusting on the fly. So that's very, very good. And when it comes to AI, I still think there's lots of potential there. Just gotta get better at like explaining it, I think, and showing like what to use it for rather than figure it out. It's probably better like some use case and so on, I think. Yeah, so what's next? Almost at the end. What's next? Well, good question. I got some new classes. Actually, one new class coming up next semester, storytelling class, which I'm very excited for. I will have some events again. I will have some workshops again. There will be some real life projects in some of the classes as well. Basically everything that I said, I will try to implement. I don't want to take it away now in case my students are listening. But yeah, more experiments. I'm still excited to run experiments which try different things. I have like 3 vastly different classes waiting for me next semester. So very excited about those. We'll do a recap afterward again. We'll definitely focus on keeping the design thinking approach implemented, adjusted to, of course, education, higher education. But yeah, can't wait to actually make this work. And the classes should be, I have 2 biggish, 1 smallish class, so that should be okay. We're gonna work in groups in the bigger classes. Should be still fun. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. That's on Outlook. I want to do the recap, and so that's the recap. Now, do let me know how did your semester go? What did you learn? What reflections did you have? Like, what's the feedback you gotten? What do you want to try better next time? What do you want to avoid? What are you looking forward to? Very much looking forward to like responses to that. So do shout out either social media at FunGitPod or leave your comments on Spotify, because that's what you can do now. Leave a review if you can. Like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. Until then, stay safe, take care, enjoy grading, be nice to your students, and we talk soon. This is Saudi Cal.